Hello and welcome. I'm Naveed Hussain and you're watching The Power Game. In an interconnected world where economies run on energy and stability rests on fragile balances, there exists a narrow stretch of water that can alter the course of global history. The Strait of Hormuz, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, is one of the most strategic waterways on Earth. Here, geography becomes power and power becomes pressure. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a maritime route, it's the world's most critical energy choke point. Each day, up to 21 million barrels of oil pass through this corridor, fueling industries, powering cities, and sustaining economies. Alongside oil flows LNG, fertilizer, and petrochemicals, the unseen lifelines of modern civilization. For Asia, particularly China, India, Japan, and South Korea, Hormuz is not optional, it's essential.
There are three main commodities that are going through this route. One is oil, of course. Second important thing is fertilizer. And the third, which is not very much discussed, is the helium gas, which is a very key input for the MRI machines, scientific things, fiber optics and all. So these three major commodities, other than the aluminum and all other things, these are import-export is going through this thing. And when we talk about oil, of course, almost 20% of the global oil trade is going through this thing.
The world consumes about 100 million barrels of oil on a daily basis. And about 20 million barrels of oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. So that's something like 20% of the global daily production passing through the strait. Other than oil, there's about 16 million tons of fertilizer that passes through the strait. There's about $1 billion worth of helium. Helium, as you know, is used in our MRI machines at hospitals. Semiconductors as well. There's sulfur that passes through it. There's aluminum that passes through the same strait. So strait has been very important as far as not just oil, but a number of other critical elements as well.
For decades, the strait has stood at the edge of confrontation, threatened but never fully closed. That changed on February 28, when US-Israel war on Iran triggered dangerous escalation. Tehran responded with restricting passage through Hormuz, transforming a warning into reality. The result was immediate. Traffic dropped by nearly 97%. A collapse of global energy movement within days.
If you see from Iranian point of view, I think it's very easy for them to block Strait of Hormuz because the geography provides them that dominance, and they have actually made use of their geography in a much better way. That they have established small bases all around the coast. They have established small bases on all the islands that exist in Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz. They have installed missile batteries over there. They have speed boats which are stationed all along the coast as well as on the bases on the islands.
The name Hormuz carries a deeper resonance, one rooted in ancient Persian belief of Zoroastrianism. It derives from Ahura Mazda, the supreme deity, the embodiment of order, wisdom, and creation. A name once associated with harmony now echoes through a region defined by conflict. When Hormuz is disrupted, the world feels it instantly. Oil prices surge, supply chains tighten, inflation rises. Japan, which sources up to 80% of its oil from the Persian Gulf, faces immediate vulnerability. Developing economies, already fragile, bear the brunt of rising energy costs. This is not just a regional crisis, it's a global shockwave.
In the current situation, almost all the countries are vulnerable, but their vulnerability depends on two things. One is that how dependent they are on energy import, and the second is that do they have strategic reserves of energy, petrol or something or not. So starting from China, so China is exposed, but it's diversified. So we can say that it can manage. It will have it can manage initially, but if this conflict stays, there will be impact on China. But China has large strategic reserves, and also China has diversified supply. I mean, they're not dependent only on one country, so they have this leverage. And third thing is that they also have state control over allocation of energy within the country, so they can also manage. When we talk about India. So India, I would say, is highly vulnerable because they have limited domestic production. They don't have much reserve, very limited. I think approximately 85% of the petroleum products it's imported in India. So that's why they are more vulnerable. And they're also, because it's a developing countries, so that it comes in the developing countries, although it's a large economy, but their households, their people, they are sensitive to the price changes. So that I would say that India is vulnerable. Talking about Japan, although it's currently it's highly dependent on energy imports, but they are well prepared because they have large strategic petroleum reserves, and they have strong coordination mechanisms, and also they have very advanced green technology as well. So that could save them. And about the South Korea, I mean, they are close to Japan, but they are slightly more vulnerable. They are not that prepared when we compared it with Japan, because they are very highly exposed to the import from Gulf countries, LNG export, petroleum exports.
The Strait of Hormuz is not just geography, it's strategy. For Iran, it's leverage against global pressure.
It's advantageous for the country or for the force that have asymmetric warfare in Strait of Hormuz, because these are confined waters, these are restricted waters, and the bigger platforms in fact pose a bigger target also, while and the bigger platforms are also restricted in their maneuverability because the depth and width of waters here is restricted and confined. So the smaller platforms are much agile, maneuverable, they are speedy, and I think they can inflict more damage on the bigger platforms than the bigger can do, vice versa.
For the world, it is lifeline that must remain open.
There's been research studies done over the past 50 years running, and they have standardized benchmarks as to what price of oil would trigger a recession in global economy. The first benchmark is about $100 a barrel. When the oil price per barrel hits about $100, the Western economies begin entering into a recessionary phase as far as their economy is concerned. If the price hits $120 a barrel, then airline industry around the world starts going bankrupt. If the prices go up to $130, then it has a major impact on developing countries like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and other developing countries, and they start running out of dollar reserves. If the price hits $135, $140, that would be really catastrophic for the global economy. But again, the impact on developing countries would be far more dangerous than the developed world.
recession. So when we talk about recession, what does this mean? I mean, basically three major components of recession. One is the GDP growth slows down or sometimes go to negative. Second is the high unemployment rate. The third is high inflation. So we are seeing that if this situation continues, these all three signs will be there, and if these signs are there for more than a year or so the whole global economy will be in recession. Most of the economic estimates or expectations are there.
Between these competing imperatives lies the fragile equilibrium, one that defines modern geopolitical order.
If it escalates, certainly it will grow wider in its scope. The Arab countries that have not been able to take part in this conflict directly, I think the credit goes to Pakistan, which has been able to hold them back. But God forbid, if they enter into this conflict, I think it will have much wider implications, as well as much wider scale of the conflict, which nobody will be able to control. So it will spiral out of the hands of everybody, in fact, if it escalates, because the regional countries, they depend on Strait of Hormuz. It's not only their oil and gas that they export, their daily living is based on Strait of Hormuz. Everything coming from the world to them is via Strait of Hormuz. So as long as they don't have the alternate routes, which they don't have really right now, I think their dependence on Strait of Hormuz is critical.
The first response was pressure. US President Donald Trump issued a direct ultimatum: reopen the strait within days or face devastating strikes on Iran's infrastructure. Tehran did not budge.
You see, the whole world has joined hands together. They have actually pleaded Iran. They have cautioned Iran. They have threatened Iran. Even the destruction that has been caused by Israel and US, that has not been able to deter Iran from relieving the control of the Strait of Hormuz. And if any force, maybe only US or US-led coalition or any other coalition, tries to do it physically, I think Iran has many more options available to block it permanently. It's right now being controlled, but it can be blocked, and that can be catastrophic as much as you can even imagine, because the Strait of Hormuz will be blocked for everybody, not even for months, maybe for years.
When threats failed, the United States escalated. The US Navy was ordered to blockade the strait, targeting vessels accused of cooperating with Iran's restrictions. The objective was to inflict economic pain on Tehran.
A naval blockade is an act of war. We need to be clear on this, and this is how it's been perceived, throughout warfare, or at least modern warfare. So a blockade by the US would certainly be part of the ongoing armed conflict. Now, within an armed conflict, is it justified? Yes. It does not violate the laws of war as long as you're not targeting civilian objects or civilians themselves. As long as the blockade that you are undertaking is conducted in a manner which otherwise abides by the laws of war, and so it is not in and of itself a violation of IHL laws of war. However, it can be a violation of Article 2.4. Which is the UN Charter, which in the UN Charter basically says that you cannot interfere in the territorial integrity or political independence of another state. And this entire armed conflict, the initial attacks by the US, the ongoing attacks by the US and Israel, amount to such a violation of Article 2.4.
The strait's strategic importance has long made it a flashpoint. During the Iran-Iraq war, both sides targeted oil shipments, a campaign known as the Tanker War. In recent years, ships have been seized, attacked, and used as bargaining chips in broader geopolitical conflicts. Each crisis reinforces a central truth: Hormuz is a leverage, and as one analyst says, the nuclear bomb of Iran.
So I think from Iranian point of view, it's pretty easy. They are very well entrenched over there, very well embedded in the Strait of Hormuz and Persian Gulf. They have invested a lot in that, and it is very difficult to seize control from them. That's why I think despite all warnings, cautions, and destruction that US and Israel have created in Iran, no one has been able to seize control of the Strait of Hormuz from them. But for any other force, I think it will be very difficult to do that conversely.
International law provides a framework for passage, but enforcement depends on power.
This is the perennial question that we have about international law, right? Who enforces international law? And ultimately, it is the states themselves. And the reason for that is that states, international law as a construct is something that is voluntarily agreed upon. It is voluntarily, states submit to it. So even the International Court of Justice, which we think is, this international court, but it has no jurisdiction unless the state agrees to give it jurisdiction. And there are multiple ways it can do so. But similarly, international maritime law, the only way it can actually be enforced is if the states either voluntarily agree because it makes economic sense or it makes political sense to abide by an agreed upon set of rules. So that I think is one issue. The second issue is that you don't really have an international police force that can go around and do that. The analogy you have is the U.S. Fifth Fleet, which is based in the Middle East, and that the United States, as your preeminent superpower, has been guarding as a public good almost freedom of navigation of the seas. And whether that is the South China Sea, whether it is the Straits of Malacca or the Straits of Hormuz, the United States has and its Navy has really played this role in telling states that you don't have sovereign authority over these areas, even though the Strait of Hormuz comes within, say, the exclusive economic zone of Iran and Oman. But having said that, even then it is limited. It's not the same as being able to fully enforce as we would, the police in, say, Pakistan would enforce, or in any domestic jurisdiction would enforce the law. And we've seen the most that a state can do is use its military might to enforce this, or use the Security Council to authorize military action against a state. But this is exactly the situation we're in. Military, might has not been able to subdue the Iranians. They have not opened up the Strait of Hormuz because of any attack like this. And therefore, the ultimate stick that the international regime has, or the international community has, which is, military attacks, those have failed. And so there really is no recourse at this particular junction. But of course, there are things like international pressure, mediation that Pakistan is playing a very positive role in that can work there.
While global conventions support free transit, Iran asserts greater control over the strait. This legal ambiguity fuels strategic tension.
Iran is not really bound by UNCLOS because it hasn't ratified the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And therefore it says the only thing that binds it is really the customary international law provision of innocent passage, which can be limited in times of war. So Iran itself feels legally justified in blocking the Strait of Hormuz. However, this argument isn't followed by much of the world, and especially not by the maritime powers. They argue that transit passage has hardened, it has crystallized into customary international law in itself, and therefore binds Iran regardless of whether Iran has ratified UNCLOS or ratified any other treaty for that matter.
The strait is not blocked by walls, but by invisible threats. Naval mines, cheap, silent, and devastating, can halt billion-dollar trade. Boats, submarines, and drones can turn the strait into a high-risk combat zone. Even clearing mines could take months, making disruption a powerful tool.
It again depends from which side you're looking at it. If you're looking from the side of the country who has deployed or who has thrown mines into the water, I think it's easier for them, because whenever you throw mines into the water, you note their positions and you exactly know where the mine was thrown, so you can go near to that position, find it out and destroy it. So that takes little time. But if you are seeing from the other side's perspective, I think it's very, very difficult for any country who do not know where the mines were thrown or what types of mines were thrown. I think it's very, very cumbersome and difficult and risky operation for them, because you have to go cautiously, find out the mine in a water where current is very fast, so the mine might have drifted also. So you need to actually find it very carefully and then disengage it, destroy it, and then clear it. So until unless you know where the mine was laid, how many mines were laid, which types of mines were laid, I think it's very, very difficult and critical operation for any navy to undertake.
The battle over Hormuz is not just about reopening a waterway. It is about defining the rules of power in a changing world.
The United States has failed in its attempt to bring Iran to heel, if you will. So I don't think there's really any substantive option here other than, say, a negotiated settlement, where the Gulf states can be part of some sort of dealing with the US and with other entities, and then approach Iran with a solution.
Can global trade remain free when choke points become weapons? Or has the Strait of Hormuz become the ultimate bargaining chip in a new era of geopolitical confrontation?